Hello there and welcome. This is Free Russian speaking, but as always you can call me Mikhail or Michael. Now as usual, before the video starts, I want to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal or Super Thanks. Thank you friends and have a blessed day. Now today's video I will start with the general Vuhledar direction, where all throughout last 48 to 24 hours and generally all throughout this year, Russian forces were extremely active. After taking Novomikhailivka, a new vector of attack opened and Russians attacked in the direction of Paraskeviivka. Russians also worked on improving their general tactical situation around those two previously mentioned settlements, as well as attacked west of Solotke along this road in the direction of Vodiane, this highway, and eventually, now infamous, Vuhledar. First, let's discuss some territorial changes that occurred in the direction of Vodiane and Vuhledar, where as a result of successful offensive operations conducted here in this area, Russian forces were able to advance and capture this very small portion of the front line. Now from here let's move to the north and discuss the situation around Russian-controlled village of Georgievka, where immediately after capturing the village, Russians went on the attack in the direction of Maximilianivka. They also started attacks to the south and southwest of Georgievka in attempt to spread their zone of control around the village, thus increasing its buffer zone. And as a result of all of these actions, Russian forces were able to expand their zone of control around Georgievka by capturing this portion of the front line. From here, let's move all the way to Avdiivka frontline and quickly discuss situation that is developing around currently Ukrainian-controlled village of Yasna Poliana. Here, as a result of successful offensive actions towards this rather small village, Russian forces were able to successfully capture those territories from the Ukrainian side and officially entering the village of Yasna Poliana. Again, as you can see, the village is extremely small, which significantly decreases Ukrainian effectiveness when it comes to their defense. However, if we zoom in, we can see some fortifications on the satellite images, so at least we know that they will hold on to the remaining portions of the village until the very last minute. Again, as you can see, very convenient placement of the road will allow Ukrainians to rather easily escape Russian onslaught, leaving the small village to the Russians. And after fall of Yasna Poliana, as well as this small residential area, this peninsula, or rather Ukrainian defense of this peninsula, would become utterly useless. They would be severely cut from supplies and will find themselves in a semi-encirclement. And with Russian attacks, like I mentioned previously, already going towards Yasna Poliana, and several, at this point unsuccessful, but relentless Russian attempts at entering this small area, we can safely assume that this front line will change rather quickly. If you liked this video so far, please do consider supporting it by a like, comment, and of course, if you haven't subscribed, a subscription. Words cannot describe how important those actions are for YouTube algorithm to show this video to more and more people. So by doing all those actions, you help spread the message. Thank you in advance, and let's move on. Not going far away, let's discuss recent Russian offensive efforts in attempt to capture Sokil with continuous attacks in the direction of Voshod and Yevgenika. If we zoom in, we can see, even without any specific maps, that the village of Sokil was defended very well. Here you can see a rather difficult and well-built trench network system, which Russians couldn't take for some time. In order to deal with that problem, Russians attacked to the north of this fortification area, and as a result of that, captured those territories, effectively enveloping Ukrainian defenders within the trench network system, which eventually helped them to capture it completely. So this was a result of a first attack, and this is a result of a second attack that followed very soon after. Seemingly it happened within a day, and those were the territories captured by the Russians within the last 24 hours. Here on this video that I have for you, you can see Russians destroying what would seem to be an abandoned Bradley vehicle within Sokil village. This Bradley vehicle fell victim to the fighting in this area. As we continue our journey to the north, we find ourselves near the village of Arkhangelske. Again, ever since this village fell to the Russians, Russian forces did everything in their power to immediately attack around the village, not allowing Ukrainians to entrench. And as a result of this style of fighting, Russian forces were able to greatly increase their buffer zone around Arkhangelske by capturing this portion of the front line from the Ukrainian side. just like with the situation in Sokil, which I mentioned previously in the video, after capturing those territories, immediately Russians went on another attack and added this portion of the front line to their territorial gains as well, with overall territory captured in this area within the last 24 hours looking something like this. And then from here let's move slightly to the east and discuss recent Russian offensive efforts in the direction of Ukrainian-controlled village of Alexandropol. And as a result of successful storming operations, Russian forces took control over this territory. From Avdiivka, let's continue our journey to the north, where a very interesting situation had started to develop around big city of Toretsk and its surrounding towns like Pivnichne, New York, and Zalisne. Here, Russian forces were able to successfully discover the exact time when Ukrainians will rotate their troops, and at the right moment launched a surprise attack in the direction of Pivnichne, which resulted in a staggering success, with those territories coming in under Russian control. If we zoom in, we can see that Russians got extremely close to the very first streets and buildings of the town. They even managed to storm and capture the first building of what would seem to be some kind of water purifying station, which marked the start of fighting here in this area as well. Now, as you can see, this area is fairly isolated from the city proper. However, it will allow Russians to take control over this forested area and then enter the city from this side of the rail line. From here, let's go all the way to the north and discuss the situation within the Chasiv Yar city. Here, Russian forces continued to storm this micro-district, as well as attempted to expand their zone of control around the canal, fought in Kalinivka, and along this rail line. And although Ukrainian soldiers here are fighting bravely and selflessly, unfortunately for them this is not enough. All they can do right now is counterattack in attempt to at least slow down Russian advances. When it comes to the effectiveness of those attacks, Russian forces were unable to advance here in this area, as well as further expand their control over the micro-district. Their attacks along the rail lines were also unsuccessful. But the situation in the village of Kalinivka is more interesting. It seems that after a successful Russian attack, Ukrainian formations were forced to retreat, with those territories coming in under Russian control. Here on this video you can see the city of Chasiv Yar, to be more specific the micro-district. Ukrainian troops had taken refuge and fortified themselves within the high-raised buildings that you can see on your screens. Interestingly enough, as soon as Russians start to bombard this portion of the city, Ukrainian formations immediately retreat to the basements of those said buildings, where they safely await the end of Russian barrage and then just go up and take defense. This is one of the reasons why Russian advance in this area has slowed down. Then from here let's quickly discuss the situation near the Razdalivka village. As you know, recently Russians captured a very important tactical height with trench network system that allowed Russians to enter the village. And in support of those attacks, Russians launched an assault along this rail line, which allowed them to capture this stretch of territory, which, although small, is actually of very great importance. As you can see, Russians acquired control over this force line that is attached to the very first street of Razdalivka village. You can see Syriac maps placing this portion of the village in the gray area. So perhaps as I speak, or you watching this video, the storming operations in this area are already in full swing. From Razdalivka, let's quickly discuss situation in the general Kharkiv Oblast. Again, the situation is such that the Russian advance here had slowed down to a full stop, which Ukrainians used to their advantage. Here they conducted multiple assaults from the village of Liptse, pushing Russians back all the way to the village of Gribka, and even entering its first streets and buildings. And with Ukrainian counterattacks continuing without stop, Russian capture of the village of Liptse might be prolonged for an uncertain amount of time. Now, this isn't the only place where Ukrainians counterattack. Here inside of Vovchansk, they continue to desperately fight and defend this fairly isolated portion of the city. And despite all Russian efforts, Ukrainians continue to hold onto it, even counterattacking and taking this small portion of the city from the Russian side. Situation around the village of Tikhe has now been cleared, with Ukrainians taking full control over it. Ukrainians had also re-entered Vovchansk from the southeast as well. Here, across the entire Vovchansk front line, both Russians and Ukrainians are battling out for the control of the initiative. Now, as you can see, due to the territorial changes happening mostly in favor of Ukrainians here in this area, we can say that as of right now, the balance of power had tilted towards Ukrainian side. Now again, if you have an opinion about this whole situation, maybe you have a theory on what's going on here, please do express it in the comment section. It is there for a reason and I would love to read it. With this I end today's video, hopefully it was to your liking and was informative enough. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day and always remember, Russia will be free and great.